royal guard took Camilla to jail after she attacked the new King William. The corridors gleamed under the soft light, polished floors reflecting the grandeur that centuries of tradition had built. Courtiers hurried back and forth, adjusting ceremonial decorations, rehearsing speeches, and ensuring that every detail was flawless. It was the day the nation would witness King William stepping into his official role, a moment marked by history and pride. Cameras from media outlets were already set up outside, their lenses waiting to capture the smallest movements of the royal family. Inside, the air was a mixture of excitement and tension, the kind that only accompanies monumental events that carry the weight of legacy. Camilla, a long-standing member of the royal family, was moving quietly through the palace halls. She had always been known for her composed demeanor, the kind that inspired respect and sometimes fear among those who watched her closely. She was usually calm, polite, and unflinchingly controlled, a figure who maintained her dignity even in the face of criticism or scandal. Yet today, something was different. There was an unusual intensity in her eyes, a sharpness that suggested a storm brewing beneath her carefully composed exterior. Her steps were measured but fast, and those who crossed her path could sense an unusual tension radiating from her. It was not yet clear what was stirring her, but it was clear to anyone observing that the calm Camilla everyone knew had shifted into a form that felt unpredictable. The palace was prepared for grandeur. The hall where the ceremony would take place had been decorated with gold and red accents, flowers arranged with perfection, and flags lining the walls in precise formation. Guests began to arrive, including dignitaries, politicians, and members of the press. Their attire sparkled under the chandeliers, and polite greetings filled the air as everyone took their places. Cameras clicked incessantly, capturing smiles, handshakes, and the elegant rituals that had been practiced for generations. King William, the new monarch, entered the hall with the air of confidence and calm expected of someone in his position. He carried himself with a sense of duty and responsibility, aware that all eyes were on him. Courtiers whispered among themselves about his poise, his speeches, and how smoothly the transition of power had been orchestrated. But amidst the organized and predictable environment, Camilla's presence was a stark contrast. She had been moving through the crowd, watching William intently, her gaze unwavering and unusually intense. At first, observers thought she was merely another family member taking her place at the ceremony. But soon, subtle signs began to emerge. Her hands were clenched slightly, her breath seemed more rapid, and her eyes followed William's every move with an intensity that went beyond normal attention. Those closest to her noticed a tension that seemed almost tangible, a quiet hum of unease that grew stronger with each passing minute. Conversations paused momentarily when she passed, as if instinctively people sensed that something unusual was about to unfold. The ceremony began formally, with speeches praising the new king, recounting his achievements, and emphasizing the unity and stability of the royal family. Applause followed each statement, cameras capturing every expression. King William remained composed, acknowledging the applause with nods and subtle smiles, while Camilla's presence grew more noticeable. People whispered softly among themselves, commenting on the unusual stillness in her posture, the way her gaze seemed fixed on William in a way that was more than casual observation. Then, in a moment that no one could have predicted, the tension snapped. Camilla, who had been quietly observing from a slight distance, suddenly stepped forward with unexpected force. Her movement was swift and deliberate, drawing gasps from the crowd. In the blink of an eye, she had closed the distance to William, and with an action that shocked everyone, she lunged toward him. Security personnel reacted instinctively, but for a brief, heart-stopping moment, there was no one to stop her. The hall erupted into chaos. Cameras flashed, gasps filled the air, and a stunned silence fell over those watching, unable to comprehend what was happening before their eyes. Some guests instinctively shielded their faces, while others froze, unsure whether to intervene or stay back. Courtiers whispered urgently, trying to call for assistance, while others were already on their feet, rushing toward the scene. Camilla, driven by an emotion that seemed almost uncontrollable, continued her movement, reaching out toward William with a force that no one had anticipated. The expressions on the faces of those around her were a mix of fear, disbelief, and concern. People who had known her for years could not reconcile this sudden act with the composed woman they thought they understood. Security finally closed in, surrounding Camilla carefully but firmly. Their training allowed them to restrain her without harming her, though the struggle was tense. She resisted, shouting words that were muffled in the confusion, her voice carrying both anger and a sense of desperation. "He doesn't deserve this crown," she shouted, her words echoing through the hall, leaving everyone in stunned silence. The phrase carried weight, reflecting a deep personal conflict, a family tension that had perhaps been simmering for years. People whispered to each other, trying to understand what could have provoked such a direct confrontation in a moment that was meant to celebrate unity and tradition. King William, initially surprised, managed to step back with the help of nearby courtiers. His expression was calm but firm, showing both shock at the event and an understanding of the delicate handling required in such a public and historical setting. The cameras captured everything: the shock, the swift intervention of the guards, the tension that filled the hall. For those watching live on television or through media reports, the event felt almost unreal. A member of the royal family, usually seen as composed and dignified, had publicly confronted the new king in a moment of raw emotion. As Camilla was escorted away, her resistance slowly subdued by the trained guards, whispers and murmurs filled the hall. Guests were left in disbelief, some in shock, some in quiet speculation. What had caused Camilla, a figure known for her poise, to act in such a way? What underlying tensions or emotions had driven her to take such a public stand? Even as she was led out, her eyes never left William's, a mix of anger, sorrow, and determination evident in her gaze. The moment was frozen in the minds of everyone present, a moment that would be remembered and discussed for years to come. Outside the hall, the palace staff worked quickly to manage the immediate aftermath. The media, already present in large numbers, scrambled to report the unexpected incident, their cameras and microphones capturing every reaction. News of the confrontation spread rapidly, causing shockwaves across the nation and beyond. Social media platforms were flooded with speculation, analysis, and opinions, each attempting to make sense of the sudden and dramatic event. People debated the motivations, the family dynamics, and the possible consequences of what had just occurred. Inside, King William composed himself, aware that his response would be scrutinized as much as the incident itself. He maintained his calm demeanor, understanding that the stability of the monarchy and the respect of the public depended on his ability to handle even the most unexpected disruptions with grace. Meanwhile, Camilla, now under close watch, was led to a private area where the guards could ensure her safety and prevent further escalation. The palace was entering a delicate period of crisis management, balancing the need to address the immediate situation while preserving the dignity of the royal family. This unexpected confrontation, sudden and shocking, had transformed what was meant to be a ceremonial celebration into a moment of historical tension. It revealed the human emotions and vulnerabilities that exist even within the walls of centuries-old institutions. Camilla's actions, driven by personal conflict and long-simmering emotions, left an indelible mark on the event, ensuring that this day would be remembered not only for the crowning of a new king, but also for the dramatic confrontation that challenged the very image of composure and tradition. As the hall gradually regained order, and as guests tried to process what had just unfolded, one thing was clear. This incident would shape the conversations and decisions of the royal family for weeks, months, and perhaps even years to come. Behind the glittering facade of tradition and ceremony, the complexities of human emotion had erupted, leaving a story that would be told, retold, and analyzed with fascination and intrigue. And for Camilla, the events of that day would mark a turning point, a moment where her emotions, long held in check, had finally broken through in the most dramatic way possible. The moment Camilla lunged at King William, the air in the grand hall seemed to freeze. For a split second, it was as if time had slowed, and everyone present could hardly believe their eyes. The whispers of the courtiers, the gasps from the guests, and the clicking cameras all merged into a single chaotic sound. The security guards, trained for situations that many could never imagine, sprang into action immediately. They had practiced for moments like these countless times in drills, But this was the first time they had to face a royal family member acting in such a manner, and the stakes were immeasurably higher. The royal guards moved as one. They formed a tight circle around Camilla, their faces calm and professional, even as adrenaline surged through their veins. They knew they had to act swiftly, but they also had to maintain composure and restraint. Any unnecessary force could worsen the situation and cause irreparable damage to the reputation of the palace. One guard stepped forward, speaking in a steady, commanding voice. "Ma'am, please step back and remain calm." His words were careful, designed to soothe and control simultaneously. Camilla resisted immediately. She pulled back slightly but then leaned forward again, her face flushed with anger and frustration. "He doesn't deserve this crown," she shouted, her voice echoing across the hall. Her words, charged with raw emotion, sent another wave of shock through the audience. Guests froze in place, some whispering to each other in disbelief, trying to understand what could have motivated such a dramatic outburst from someone they had always seen as composed and reserved. The guards worked to gently restrain her without hurting her. They held her arms firmly but not violently, guiding her backward toward a safer area away from the king. Camilla struggled, but the training and coordination of the guards made it clear that her attempts would be in vain. She was strong, determined, and fueled by emotion, but the royal guards were disciplined, their movements precise, and their goal clear. Protect the king, protect the staff, and protect Camilla herself from causing harm in her moment of intense emotion. King William, despite the shock, maintained his composure. He stepped back slightly, allowing the guards to take control of the situation, but he remained alert and cautious. His calmness contrasted sharply with the tension in the room. It was clear that he understood the importance of handling the event with dignity. Any wrong move, any sign of panic, could have escalated the situation further or even made it a public scandal. His eyes followed Camilla closely, not with anger, but with a measured concern, recognizing that her actions were driven not just by anger, but by deep-seated emotion. Meanwhile, the guests were trying to process what was happening. Journalists quickly raised their cameras, capturing every angle, every movement. Some guests instinctively took out their phones, either to record or to call loved ones and share the unbelievable scene unfolding before them. The hall, which had been filled with applause and formality moments ago, now resonated with murmurs, gasps, and hurried footsteps as staff members and attendants tried to manage the crowd. It was chaos, but beneath it was a sense of disciplined control. The palace staff, despite their surprise, knew how to act efficiently under pressure. Camilla's resistance began to waver slightly as the guards maintained a careful hold. She continued to shout and struggle, her words echoing through the ornate hall, but there was a hint of exhaustion in her movements. It was as if the weight of the moment, the years of emotions, grievances, and frustrations, was finally taking its toll. Her face, usually composed, now showed the strain of her internal conflict. People watching closely could see her eyes filled with both anger and sorrow, a reflection of the complex feelings that had built up over time. One guard, noticing a slight relaxation in her resistance, spoke calmly. "We are not here to harm you. Please follow us quietly." His tone was firm yet gentle, intended to assure her that she was not under attack but was being guided to a safer space. Camilla hesitated, torn between her desire to express her feelings and the realization that continuing to resist would only escalate the situation further. Her gaze shifted briefly toward King William, and in that instant, there was a flash of vulnerability behind her defiance, a fleeting moment where the human emotion beneath her bold action became visible. As the guards escorted her toward a private area, the palace staff worked quickly to restore order. Courtiers reassured the other guests, guiding them back to their seats or to safer positions. The photographers and journalists adjusted their equipment, ensuring they captured the story while maintaining the dignity of the royal family. The sound of murmurs and camera clicks filled the hall, but gradually, a sense of controlled calm returned. The chaos was not entirely gone, but it had been contained enough to prevent further panic or injury. Outside the immediate scene, the palace began activating its contingency plans. Emergency protocols for royal safety were implemented instantly. Additional guards were stationed at strategic points, palace entrances were monitored, and the staff prepared to manage the media and public reaction. These measures, though largely unseen by the public, demonstrated the thorough preparation that the palace maintained for moments of crisis. It was a reminder that even in the midst of shock and drama, there was structure, planning, and control behind the scenes. Inside the holding area where Camilla was guided, the atmosphere was quieter but no less tense. The guards ensured she was safe, giving her space to regain composure while maintaining their watchful presence. She sat down, her hands trembling slightly as she attempted to calm herself. It was a stark contrast to the bold and aggressive actions she had taken just moments earlier. The shift from public confrontation to private containment highlighted the human aspect of the event, the intense emotions that can overwhelm even the most composed individuals when pressure, history, and personal conflict converge. During this time, King William was briefed on the situation. He listened carefully as staff explained what had happened, the steps taken to protect him, and the measures in place to manage the aftermath. His calm demeanor persisted, reflecting a deep understanding of the responsibility that came with his role. Despite the shock and potential embarrassment of the incident, he maintained his focus on safety, protocol, and measured response. His approach reflected the training, discipline, and wisdom necessary for someone in his position, a reminder that even in moments of personal danger, leadership required poise and rationality. Outside the palace, word of the incident spread quickly. News channels interrupted regular programming to report on the dramatic confrontation. Social media exploded with reactions, some expressing disbelief, others speculating on the reasons behind Camilla's actions. Headlines questioned the stability of the royal family, the pressures of royal life, and the motivations that could lead to such a public outburst. The incident became a trending topic within minutes, with millions discussing, debating, and analyzing every detail of the confrontation. Public fascination grew, not just because of the dramatic action, but because it revealed a very human side of royalty, a side often hidden behind layers of tradition, decorum, and protocol. Inside the palace, the security team continued to monitor the situation carefully. Camilla was not left alone. Trained personnel ensured she remained safe while the immediate threat had been neutralized. Meanwhile, discussions among senior staff focused on the next steps. They had to manage not only the public perception, but also the internal dynamics of the royal family. Sensitive communication would be key, both to protect reputations and to address the underlying issues that had led to the incident. The balance between transparency and discretion was delicate, requiring careful judgment at every turn. As the minutes passed, Camilla gradually began to regain a sense of control. Her breathing slowed, and the tension in her body eased slightly. Yet the intensity in her eyes remained, reflecting a mixture of defiance, regret, and deep contemplation. The guards observed her carefully, ready to intervene if necessary, but also giving her space to process what had just occurred. It was a moment of reflection, a pause in the drama, where human emotion and institutional protocol intersected in a unique and unforgettable way. Back in the hall, the ceremony, though disrupted, resumed cautiously. Courtiers guided the guests, ensuring that the event could continue with dignity and minimal further disruption. King William, maintaining his calm and composed demeanor, addressed the audience briefly, acknowledging the unexpected incident with professionalism and grace. His words were measured, focused on unity, tradition, and the importance of moving forward. The crowd, still processing the earlier confrontation, listened attentively, many finding reassurance in the king's poise and thoughtful response. The incident had left a lasting impression on everyone present. Guests, staff, and the royal family themselves were reminded that beneath the polished surface of tradition and ceremony, human emotions could erupt in the most unexpected ways. Camilla's actions, driven by a complex mix of personal history, emotion, and perhaps unspoken grievances, had created a moment that would be remembered as one of the most dramatic in recent royal history. Even as calm slowly returned, the implications of the event were far-reaching. It raised questions about family dynamics, the pressures of public life, and the ways in which long-standing emotions could suddenly manifest in public. The palace staff, the security team, and the royal family knew that careful management of the aftermath would be essential to preserving dignity, maintaining public confidence, and ensuring the well-being of all involved. By the end of the day, Camilla had been placed in a secure and private location, monitored by the guards, while King William continued his duties with a calm professionalism that reassured both the guests and the public. The hall, though still echoing with whispers and speculation, gradually returned to a semblance of normalcy. What had begun as a day of celebration had transformed into a moment of historical tension, highlighting the delicate balance between human emotion and the structured world of royalty. Through it all, one fact remained clear. The dramatic confrontation had revealed the human side of royalty, the vulnerability beneath the veneer of tradition and control. Camilla's bold action, though shocking, reminded everyone that even within the walls of centuries-old institutions, emotions, conflicts, and personal struggles could emerge in ways that were unpredictable, intense, and unforgettable. The news of Camilla's confrontation with King William had spread like wildfire, reaching every corner of the nation within hours. Television networks interrupted regular programming to report the shocking incident, while newspapers printed front-page stories with bold headlines that could hardly hide the astonishment of the event. Social media platforms were flooded with reactions, millions of people commenting, speculating, and sharing videos captured by journalists or by the guests themselves. Some expressed shock and disbelief that a member of the royal family could act so boldly, while others tried to analyze her motivations, debating whether it was anger, jealousy, or a deeper personal grievance that had caused her to lash out. The incident dominated conversations everywhere, from private homes to crowded cafes, reminding everyone that even centuries-old traditions could be shaken by raw human emotion. Inside the palace, the atmosphere was tense and methodical. Staff moved quickly, ensuring that security remained tight while also managing the optics of the situation. Every step had to be carefully calculated: how to address the public, how to handle the media, and how to maintain dignity while managing an unprecedented internal crisis. The senior aides convened an urgent meeting to discuss the official statement the palace would release. Words needed to be chosen with care. One misstep could fuel speculation or cause further embarrassment. After much deliberation, a brief announcement was prepared. Camilla was being investigated, the king remained unharmed, and the palace was taking all necessary measures to ensure security and decorum. It was precise, formal, and controlled, yet beneath the carefully chosen words, the tension was palpable. Meanwhile, Camilla was held in a secure, private room, watched over by the royal guards. Unlike her earlier outburst, she now appeared calmer, though her face reflected a mixture of exhaustion, anger, and deep reflection. She sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, staring at the floor as if replaying the events in her mind. Each word she had shouted, each movement she had made, was weighing heavily upon her now. For years, she had lived under scrutiny, balancing expectations and traditions with personal feelings that had often been buried beneath polite smiles and courteous behavior. The confrontation had been the culmination of emotions long suppressed, and now, in the quiet aftermath, she faced the reality of her actions. Her thoughts drifted back to the months and years that had led to this point. Family gatherings, ceremonies, and public appearances often left her feeling sidelined, overlooked, or undervalued. Though she had remained composed in public, privately she had struggled with feelings of frustration and resentment. King William, now the new monarch, had always been the focus of attention, praised for his poise, leadership, and popularity. Camilla's own achievements and position, while significant, often seemed overshadowed in comparison. These emotions, combined with the pressure of centuries of tradition and public expectation, had quietly built into a storm that had erupted in the most dramatic way possible. As she sat reflecting, the guards observed her carefully, maintaining their professional composure while giving her a sense of space. They knew that while she was no longer a direct threat, the emotional intensity of the moment still required careful monitoring. It was a delicate balance, ensuring her safety and security, while also respecting her dignity as a member of the royal family. The room was quiet except for the occasional footsteps of the guards or the soft rustle of the papers detailing palace protocols. In that quiet, the gravity of the situation became even more apparent to Camilla. She realized that her actions, while impulsive, had set in motion a series of events that would be scrutinized for weeks, months, or even years. Outside, the public reaction continued to escalate. News anchors debated the incident at length, analyzing video footage and interviews, discussing the implications for the monarchy, and speculating about the possible consequences for Camilla. Opinion pieces filled newspapers and online platforms, with writers exploring every angle, from family tension and royal hierarchy to the pressures of public life and personal emotions. Some sympathized with her, suggesting that the pressures she faced and the feelings of neglect could drive even the most composed individual to a breaking point. Others criticized her actions, arguing that no matter the circumstances, the monarchy demanded respect and restraint, especially in public settings. The debate was intense, reflecting not only the shock of the incident, but also the human fascination with the vulnerabilities of those who seem untouchable. Within the palace, discussions about the next steps continued. Legal advisors reviewed the situation carefully, considering the protocols for addressing misconduct by a member of the royal family. The goal was to find a resolution that upheld both the law and the traditions of royalty. Advisors weighed public perception, the safety of all parties involved, and the long-term reputation of the monarchy. Every decision had to balance these complex factors, recognizing that the public would scrutinize every word, every action, and every gesture. Camilla's own reflection during this time was intense. She understood the gravity of her actions, but she also felt a sense of clarity about why she had acted as she did. It was not a mere act of rebellion or anger. It was a statement of her long-suppressed emotions. She had felt sidelined, overlooked, and overshadowed by the focus on King William. In that moment of confrontation, all those feelings had come to the surface. Sitting quietly in the holding room, she thought about how her actions would be interpreted. Some would see her as reckless, others as brave, but ultimately she recognized that she had expressed emotions that had been trapped for far too long. Even as she reflected, the palace staff was preparing for the public handling of the situation. Camilla's family members were informed discreetly, and plans were made to manage both internal discussions and public communications. Courtiers and aides spoke to journalists, offering carefully measured statements that would clarify the situation without revealing private family details. They emphasized that the king was safe, that security had acted efficiently, and that steps were being taken to ensure the well-being of all involved. This careful communication was necessary not only to preserve the monarchy's image, but also to prevent speculation from overshadowing the real human emotions at play. Meanwhile, King William continued his duties with composure. Despite the personal shock of the incident, he understood the importance of maintaining public confidence. He participated in ceremonies, addressed the media with poise, and reassured both the public and his staff that the situation was under control. His calmness became a point of focus in media coverage, highlighting the contrast between his steady demeanor and the emotional eruption that Camilla had displayed. It was a reminder that leadership required not just authority, but also the ability to navigate crises with patience, clarity, and dignity. As the day progressed, Camilla began to process the reactions from outside the palace. She heard about the debates, the discussions, and the opinions forming about her actions. Some of it stung, some of it resonated, but all of it reminded her of the impact of her choices. For the first time, she realized the scale of the consequences, not just for herself, but for the family, the monarchy, and the public perception. Her private emotions had spilled into the public sphere, transforming a personal confrontation into a national conversation. Yet, even amid the tension and reflection, Camilla began to consider what could come next. She thought about reconciliation, accountability, and the possibility of repairing relationships that had been strained by years of unspoken emotion. She recognized that the confrontation, while dramatic and public, was only a part of a larger story, a story of family, tradition, personal emotion, and the challenges of life in the public eye. She understood that moving forward would require patience, humility, and careful navigation of both her personal feelings and the expectations of her role. The palace staff, too, were preparing for the next phase. Security protocols remained in place, public statements were drafted and approved, and internal discussions focused on family support and emotional well-being. Counselors and advisors considered how best to assist Camilla in managing the fallout. recognizing that addressing emotional and psychological needs was as important as managing public perception. The incident had highlighted vulnerabilities that were often overlooked, reminding everyone that behind the grandeur and ceremony, the members of the royal family were human, with complex emotions, personal struggles, and a need for understanding. By the evening, the immediate chaos had settled, but the reverberations of the event continued. The public remained fascinated, the media continued to report, and the royal family continued to navigate the complex balance between personal emotion and public duty. Camilla remained in the secure holding area, reflecting on her actions and their consequences, considering both the immediate effects and the long-term implications for her role, her family relationships, and her public image. The confrontation had been dramatic and shocking, but it also served as a turning point, a moment of reckoning that would shape the family, the monarchy, and public perception for years to come. The day's events demonstrated the intricate interplay between personal emotion and institutional responsibility. Camilla's bold action had revealed the hidden tensions and emotional complexities of royal life, while King William's calm response had underscored the demands of leadership and the importance of measured action in moments of crisis. The story, while sensational in the public eye, was also deeply human, a reminder that even those who live within walls of tradition and ceremony are subject to the same emotions, conflicts, and moments of impulsive courage or frustration that define the human experience. As night fell over the palace, a sense of reflection settled over everyone involved. Guards remained vigilant, staff continued to manage communications, and the royal family began private conversations about the incident. Camilla, alone for a moment, allowed herself to process not just the actions of the day, but the emotions that had led her to that point. Anger, frustration, and resentment were all present, but so was clarity, a recognition that her actions, while disruptive, were a reflection of deeply human feelings that could no longer remain suppressed. Even as the world watched and speculated inside the palace walls, the story was more nuanced. It was about family, emotion, tradition, and the challenges of balancing personal needs with public expectations. It was a story that reminded everyone, both inside and outside the palace, that the royal family, despite its grandeur and history, was made up of real people, with all the complexities, contradictions, and emotions that make life unpredictable, intense, and profoundly human. The night after the incident had settled over the palace, the halls were quieter than usual. The usual clatter of footsteps, polite conversation, and hurried preparations had given way to a tense calm. The events of the day still echoed through the palace walls, leaving a mix of reflection, anxiety, and careful planning in their wake. Camilla remained in a secure, private area under the watchful eyes of the royal guards. Unlike her public outburst, the room now held a solemn stillness, a space where she could begin to process the full weight of what had happened. Sitting quietly, Camilla felt a wave of exhaustion wash over her. The adrenaline that had driven her confrontation had faded, leaving her to confront the consequences of her actions. She thought about King William, about the guests, and about the nation that had watched every moment unfold through live coverage and media reports. Her mind replayed the confrontation over and over, analyzing each movement, each word, each reaction. There was regret, certainly, but there was also a strange clarity. For the first time in years, she had expressed her emotions openly, though in a way that had shocked everyone around her. The royal guards remained nearby, professional yet respectful, giving her space while ensuring her safety. Their presence reminded her of the fine line she had walked. One wrong move could have escalated the situation, but they had managed to prevent that. She realized how quickly chaos could have overtaken the carefully controlled environment of the palace, and how fortunate she was that the trained guards had acted efficiently. Their calm professionalism had prevented her actions from causing more serious harm, allowing the incident to remain dramatic rather than tragic. Meanwhile, the palace staff was preparing for the next phase, managing public perception, guiding internal family discussions, and addressing the aftermath of the incident in a measured way. Advisors and senior courtiers debated how best to communicate with the media, balancing transparency with discretion. It was a delicate task. The public wanted answers, but the palace needed to preserve dignity and maintain the image of stability. Official statements were drafted and reviewed, carefully phrased to acknowledge the incident while emphasizing that the king was safe and that all necessary measures had been taken. Camilla's family was involved in private discussions as well. Close relatives visited discreetly, offering both comfort and counsel. They did not scold her, nor did they openly condone the actions, but their presence was a reminder that she was not alone in facing the consequences. These quiet conversations were filled with emotion, concern, understanding, and sometimes gentle admonition. But they also provided a moment of grounding, a sense that family could endure even in moments of conflict. Camilla listened, reflected, and began to see a path forward, realizing that reconciliation and accountability would be necessary for healing to begin. As the hours passed, Camilla considered what she would face in the days to come. There were legal reviews to contend with, questions from palace officials, and likely scrutiny from the media and public. Yet alongside these challenges, she also understood that this moment offered an opportunity for personal growth. The confrontation had been dramatic, yes, but it had also been honest. She had expressed emotions that had long been suppressed, and now she had a chance to address them more thoughtfully, to understand herself better, and to consider how to move forward constructively. King William, despite the shock of the attack, continued his duties with a calm and measured approach. He met with advisors, addressed the staff, and reassured the public that security protocols were in place and that the palace was functioning smoothly. His composure was remarkable to those around him, a display of leadership that emphasized steadiness in the face of unexpected challenges. Yet beneath the surface, he, too, was reflecting on the incident, considering how best to support family, maintain dignity, and manage public perception without allowing personal emotion to interfere with his responsibilities. The next morning, Camilla began a series of private meetings with counselors and palace advisors. These sessions were intended to help her process the event, consider her actions, and plan the steps for reconciliation with the family. She spoke openly, sometimes tearfully, about her frustrations, feelings of being overlooked, and the emotional burden she had carried for years. The advisors listened carefully, offering guidance without judgment. They emphasized the importance of taking responsibility while also understanding the human emotions that had led to her outburst. For Camilla, these conversations were both humbling and enlightening. She realized that acknowledgement of her emotions was important, but equally important was the way she chose to act on them moving forward. Public reaction continued to evolve as well. News outlets reported updates, social media discussions continued, and analysts speculated on the family dynamics behind the incident. Some members of the public expressed sympathy, recognizing that human emotions can overwhelm even the most disciplined individuals. Others debated the appropriateness of her actions, noting that respect for tradition and protocol was a crucial part of royal life. Amidst the debate, Camilla remained largely out of sight, reflecting quietly while the world formed opinions, understanding that she could not control the public narrative entirely, but could control how she chose to respond personally and within her family. As the days passed, steps toward reconciliation began. Camilla met with King William privately in a controlled and respectful setting. The conversation was initially tense, filled with careful words and measured tones. Camilla expressed regret for her actions, acknowledging the disruption she had caused and the public embarrassment it had created. King William listened patiently, his expression calm but attentive. He acknowledged her feelings, understanding that family dynamics are complex, and emphasized the importance of moving forward with mutual respect and consideration. The meeting did not erase the incident, but it laid the groundwork for healing and rebuilding trust. At the same time, the palace took steps to manage public perception. Carefully worded statements were released, emphasizing that Camilla was receiving support, that the family remained united, and that King William was committed to maintaining stability and dignity within the monarchy. The messaging highlighted both accountability and empathy, reinforcing the idea that even in moments of disruption, the values of respect, responsibility, and care for family remained central. The public, while still fascinated by the incident, began to see the steps toward resolution, and media coverage shifted from sensationalism to analysis of family dynamics and personal growth. Camilla's own reflection deepened during this period. She began to understand that her emotions, while real and valid, needed to be channeled in constructive ways. Acting impulsively in public had consequences not only for her, but also for the family and the institution she was part of. She recognized that true strength lay in balancing emotion with thought, passion with restraint, and personal needs with responsibility. This realization was difficult but necessary, a turning point in her personal journey toward maturity, self-awareness, and reconciliation. The weeks following the incident involved careful planning, private discussions, and gradual reintegration. Camilla participated in family meetings, offered apologies where appropriate, and began to engage in public duties with renewed focus. She demonstrated a commitment to learning from the experience, showing humility and a willingness to contribute positively to the family and the institution. King William, in turn, provided support and understanding, emphasizing collaboration and communication as the foundation for moving forward. The incident, once dramatic and shocking, began to take on the character of a life lesson, one that highlighted both the fragility and resilience of human relationships. Media coverage continued to follow the story, but the narrative gradually shifted from sensationalism to reflection. Analysts discussed the pressures of royal life, the importance of communication within families, and the human side of leadership. Camilla's willingness to engage in private reflection and reconciliation was noted, and public opinion began to soften. The story became not just about confrontation, but about growth, accountability, and the possibility of change. It reminded people that even in the most formal and controlled environments, human emotions play a vital role, and that mistakes, when acknowledged and addressed, can lead to personal development and stronger relationships. By the end of the month, the palace had regained a sense of stability. Camilla had resumed her responsibilities, carefully balancing personal reflection with public duty. King William continued to lead with composure, and the family worked together to rebuild trust and unity. The incident, while unforgettable, had ultimately strengthened their understanding of one another, revealing vulnerabilities, emotions, and the importance of communication. It became a private lesson for the family and a public reminder of the humanity behind the grandeur of royalty. Camilla, reflecting quietly on the journey, recognized that the confrontation had been a catalyst for change. She had expressed long-suppressed emotions, faced consequences, and embarked on a path of reconciliation and self-awareness. The experience had been humbling, illuminating, and ultimately transformative. She realized that while the event had caused shock and disruption, it also provided an opportunity to grow, to rebuild relationships, and to understand the delicate balance between emotion and responsibility. As life in the palace returned to its usual rhythm, Camilla carried with her the lessons of that dramatic day. She understood the power of emotion, the consequences of impulsive action, and the importance of measured reflection. The family, too, had learned valuable lessons about communication, empathy, and support. The incident became a chapter in their shared history, not as a mark of shame, but as a moment of human vulnerability, growth, and eventual reconciliation. In the end, the story of Camilla and King William was not just one of confrontation, but also of resilience. It was a reminder that even those who live under intense public scrutiny, within traditions spanning centuries, are still human. They experience anger, frustration, love, regret, and hope. And it is through these emotions, managed wisely and acknowledged thoughtfully, that individuals and families can grow stronger, wiser, and more connected. Camilla's journey from impulsive confrontation to reflective understanding illustrated the power of self-awareness, accountability, and the enduring bonds of family. The palace, once again, gleamed with the quiet dignity of tradition. Life continued, ceremonies were held, duties were performed, and the royal family moved forward. Yet beneath the formalities, the events of that day remained a vivid memory, a reminder that human emotion is as potent as any ceremony, and that reconciliation, understanding, and growth are possible, even after moments of intense disruption. For Camilla, for King William, and for the family, it was a turning point, a story of lessons learned, bridges mended, and the enduring strength of human connection.